2021, and I'll call the Charter Review Committee to order. And roll call of members.
Feedback.
Wait, we've got
Somebody's got
distortion.
feedback. Wait.
Mark, are you still there? We lost Mark.
Who did we lose?
Mark's on. You just lost his picture.
Somebody's got something else on. Hold
He
on.
has two things are on someplace.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was on,
You're okay now, Mark.
Ready?
Yep, you sound fine now.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
We will have the roll call of members. Mark Burson,
He's muted.
He's muted.
he's here.
Mark Burson, aye.
There you are.
Patricia Fallender,
Tricia Fallender, here.
Robin Hubbard,
Robin Hubbard here.
Gail Myers-Lavin,
Gail Myers-Lavin here.
Maxine Minkoff,
Maxine Minkoff here.
Walter North,
Walter here.
Neff Runyon. No, and John Fuller is here, so we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes, May 3rd, 2021.
Gail, you do an amazing job.
Okay, Mark motioned, who seconded?
Robin?
Robin,
Mhm.
any errors or omissions?
I have
Correct.
one. I have one thing.
Yeah, Patricia,
At the very end, where it says that we adjourned, it doesn't, it says 7:0 nothing. The very last line.
Oh, yes.
I think it was a 7:09 or something.
It is something.
No, it
Whatever it
actually, I
was.
think was 7 o'clock,
7 o'clock.
Oh,
but
Okay.
I'll look back. I'll find it.
Yeah, well, I
Memorial-
just, that was,
Memorable when it ends at the right time.
yes.
If there are no other errors, omissions, or corrections, we'll have a roll call vote to approve. Mark Burson,
Mark Burson, aye.
Patricia Fallender,
Tricia Fallender, aye.
Robin Hubbard,
Robin Hubbard, aye.
Gail Myers-Lavin,
Gail Myers-Lavin, aye.
Maxine Minkoff,
Maxine Minkoff, aye.
Walter North,
Aye.
and John Fuller also approves, so we accept the minutes 7-0-0. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Each Charter Review Committee meeting shall have public comment. This portion of the meeting shall not in its entirety exceed 30 minutes. Each recognized speaker at public comment shall keep his or her remarks non-personal toward any individuals, and remarks should be kept to no more than 3 minutes. These limits will be enforced at the discretion of the chairperson of the Charter Review Committee. Generally, remarks made during public comment are those that pertain to the review of the charter and should include chapter and paragraph to which they refer. If the subject, in the opinion of the chairperson of the committee or a majority of its members, would be better addressed as a future agenda item because it warrants public notice and/or debate, then the chairperson shall so indicate. Speakers at public comment shall identify themselves before speaking and should provide their contact information to the committee secretary for purposes of follow-up on items to be scheduled for future agendas. Opinions and comments expressed and the accuracy of the information provided by speakers during public comment portion of the meeting do not necessarily reflect opinions or conclusions of the Charter Review Committee. Is there anyone out there for public comment?
there is nobody out there.
Okay, I will close public comment. Item 5, Patricia Fallender, Robin Hubbard, tracking summary sheet update.
Besides what we got from Tracy Murphy, which we're discussing tonight, I haven't had anything else. I have a couple of spelling corrections of Lynn Bruno's name to fix, but I figure I'll do that if we add something else, and I'll repost it through Sarah.
Okay. Anything from you, Robin?
Nope, no, I've been checking. Nothing's come through other than
Okay.
the thing from Tracy.
Gail, resource page update.
I haven't asked Sarah for another one. I think probably we should do this once a month from now on. So the one we're looking at was the one that I showed you last time, where we had 1,777 hits. I did go back and look at it a little bit, and as of April 29th, we had 399 surveys. So I don't know how that correlates with what you've got, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But, because people may have looked and then not filled it out, but that's pretty good. And then I have a few articles that I would like to suggest, and I haven't had a chance to send them. I'd like to just read them to you right now, and then I'll send them after the meeting, and we can agree whether or not to have them at the next meeting. Some are from the Mass Municipal Association best practices. There was an economic development best practices that I thought might be good to put on the web page, on the resource page, so that others can look at it while we're discussing it as well. Another one, which is my chapter, is fostering engagement between community and town hall. And that kind of takes into place some of the questions that we've been getting about the new website and what we want on the new website and so on and so forth. Another one is on transparency. Another one is on social media policies, ethics, and the law. And then just a bit from the Attorney General, Maura Healey, on quorum and on what constitutes a quorum, whether it's a group, whether it states that it is the whole committee that you do a quorum of, even if two people are missing from it or not. So it's kind of interesting to see that in place. And the last one is just the frequently asked questions about deliberation and electronic communication. So those are those that I will send to you, and we can look at to see whether we'd like to add them at the next meeting. And that's me.
Is there a consensus that we should add these once Gail sends them to us?
So consented.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we need to vote on it, but there are several good resources there, and I think we should have her add them once she gets them together, and then send them to us so we can have a chance to look at the different web pages as necessary.
Mhm.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next item is Maxine and Walter on the results of the survey. Maxine.
Yeah, I would actually, I wasn't expecting to do that. I don't have my notes up, but Robin was really the pinnacle person in that, in terms of taking the survey results and analyzing them.
Okay.
So I would defer to Robin if that's okay.
I analyzed all the comments that people made. Maxine helped with that as well. I'm interested that they had such a high number of people who supposedly looked at the survey, because it looks to me that we had perhaps 100 people who actually filled out the survey. Which maybe the people went and looked and then they came back and looked again. We don't know if that's 100, if that number represents individual people or hits.
I believe that they're hits, but
Yeah.
you don't know how many times people might have looked.
Right. So, I think I sent it to you. There's lots of different forms that Sarah sent us the information in. And Walter, jump in whenever you feel comfortable. For the most part, people felt that our town did really well with senior citizens. Children, okay, but not as strongly. They felt that the town was pretty accountable to The electorate was pretty accountable. They're okay with families. Teenagers, it started to fall apart with more people felt they didn't have as much going there. And people physically challenged, not quite as many felt as strongly. Planning and current zoning, finding a good balance between encouraging growth and maintaining special character was 46 against, disagree or strongly disagree, to 45 agree and strongly agree. So that's kind of a if one, and I think that's one of the ones we've talked about possibly being an area of interest. They felt that the vetting of committees and boards was strong. Most of the people who filled out the survey were over 70. What a surprise here in Orleans. We had 4 people between the ages of 21 and 45 and 30 people between the ages of 46 and 70. So when it came to town regulations encouraging economic growth, more people disagreed than agreed. That was a difference of 38 people either strongly or agreed, and 49 disagreed or strongly disagreed.
Which way was that about? So that they
disagreed that the town regulations encouraged economic growth.
They disagreed that they did.
More people disagreed than agreed.
Yeah, but it was not,
Got it.
in terms of the agree, disagree, it was actually only one, but there were more strongly disagrees.
Yes. Town regulations and services easily navigated to get things done. That was 54 felt either disagreed or strongly disagreed, and 34 agreed. So there was more people who disagreed on that one as well.
I can add, I think the website came up a number of times as
Yes,
being problematic, difficult to maneuver, and not giving enough information.
yes, that was a very strong issue.
And without using names, one select person was mentioned as being very responsive to
Yes.
to questions or responding to people.
The strongly disagreed, I pulled out all the comments that people made because the way it was written in the spreadsheet we got was really hard to track it because it was spread out that long.
Right.
Well, I think that the website issues have come up on the select board's radar, and perhaps there's something in the works to upgrade the website, because I think not just our survey, but the other survey that the planning board did, that same issue, people still felt more that it wasn't as helpful as it was helpful.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
actually, looking back on some earlier minutes of theirs, or just, I don't know, somewhere in my head that I know, it seems as though that's something that the board, and I think, I want to say Dick Van Dyke, but I mean Peter. Peter and Sarah have been working on for some months. And I think that they're actually at the stage where they know what they're planning to do next.
Well, hopefully, the next time in 7 years, when it comes around again to do this, people will feel perfectly fine about it. But I think it's something we need to keep an eye on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because there was, it was like a lot of comments, like things are incorrect. It's not very user friendly. It's hard to find answers to questions, all that type of thing.
On the different things, yeah.
Do you have a comment, Mark?
Well, is there an IT committee? Is there an IT administrator? Is an IT director?
Yes.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And
Well,
he's the one that spoke, I think, to the Board of Selectmen a few weeks ago, Select Board, and talked about where they were with it. And what I'm saying is just that I think the town is being responsive to that issue, but we could ask.
Yeah, I understood
I don't know
that
how
it
you
was being worked on right now in terms of changing.
Yeah,
responsive, but it seems to be a chronic problem. And if we have to wait 7 years to fix it, the next time the charter comes around,
I don't think
No, I
that's
don't
what
think-
we're
I don't think we're
saying.
gonna
I'm
have to
saying
wait.
that-
I don't think it's our job to fix it.
No,
Yeah.
it's our
It's
job.
the
Our
select
job
board's job to fix it. But
blow the
I
horn.
think from several avenues now, we've had complaints or it just not working like people would like it to.
So actually, there's a message that Sarah just put up or that said there's a warrant article at the annual town meeting for a new website. So hopefully
Yes.
that'll take care of that.
Yes,
Um,
and it's my chapter, so I mean, that's why I've been kind of paying attention to it a little bit. And it just, there might be something that we will want to say about it, but I do think that, I do think that the town has been working on it for quite a while.
Right. There was a lot of comments about houses being overbuilt. People thinking that we're allowing too many
Mhm.
big houses to come in and it's losing its character. Some people were against, some people were like, the FW Web thing should never have happened, which it didn't. And other people were going like, that was a really bad thing. We should have let the FW Web thing happen. So it's like, you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, Rob, would you say there was kind of equal, there's, thank goodness there's affordable housing coming in and there's too much affordable housing coming in? Or
Yes.
taxes are too
I
high?
don't think
or
that it
we
was-
Use the tax money?
I don't think it was,
Both
I don't-
positions, I'm sorry.
I don't think it was so much against the affordable housing as a principle as it
No.
was against the spending more taxes. Where
Yes.
There was some pushback on taxes.
Thank you, I think that's much more correct.
Right.
Yeah.
They also, one of the other things that, obviously was done by somebody who's a contractor, but they said it's very difficult for contractors to work in this town compared to other towns. And I that's something I've heard a couple times.
That would be an issue that really, I don't know that it's our responsibility, but I do think an important signal to the select board to check out as to what happened. Because another comment was that somebody complained about how difficult it was to start business a few years ago. And there was going to be an ombudsman's commission that was set up, a committee, and that nothing ever happened. So that seems to be an issue that has recurred that warrants further investigation.
Mhm.
I thought the site plan review committee was supposed to, 20 years ago, supposed to have improved that.
I
Guess
don't
it's
think that's not their
not.
job.
It isn't?
No.
Well, and I think they tried to do, I do believe the town worked on setting up an ombudsman committee, but they couldn't get people or something to be on it.
That's correct.
I
They
think John
couldn't
might
get
know
people
more about
to
that.
become
They
ombudsmen.
didn't, I thought they didn't like the people that they got, is what I heard from one of the people that applied.
No, I didn't hear that. I
You
was still
didn't?
on
Oh,
the
I'm
select board when
surprised.
that came up, but I didn't hear that.
Oh,
Okay, so
I
Well,
think
I
there's-
think, Pat,
Yeah, there's a lot of the comments that you sent, a lot of the comments from people. And yes, you can never please everybody. But I think a lot of this information is really good that we need to pass it on to the select board because it's their
Exactly.
responsibility.
yeah,
Most of
My
this
suggestion-
is not our charge. It's not what we got back from them is not something that we can, a lot of it, it's not something we can specifically use.
I agree. Pat. I think we should prepare a quote report
mhm.
and pass it along to the select board and tell them it's not necessarily in our purview, but this is the results we got from our survey and you should be interested in this.
Right.
Mark,
Mark,
Just call your attention to the charge paragraph number 4. Search and study ways that Orleans town government can be made faster, more efficient, and nimble, both at the town meeting and in the functioning of the executive body. Sounds to me that that's just what we were discussing, nimbleness, ability to move efficiently within the town structure. So I think this fits into our charge. And I think that we have the ability, especially with the multi-member bodies, to address some of these issues that people are bringing to the attention. And I see it as an opportunity to be somewhat proactive rather than just reactive, making a list and say, here it is. So there's where I am in it. And, you know, I just see this as part of this ongoing task or charge by us to make things, for the lack of a better word, in this charge, more efficient. If other people feel differently, I totally respect that. But I think we should take this to heart. We have this data. Took a long time to put it together, and also it shows certainly some definitive trends. A contractor who can't work here, it's too difficult to work here. What is affordable housing? The problem with affordable housing is that if you're the only town that's doing it and the other towns around you are not, you sort of bear the brunt of that burden compared to other communities. So I think the survey is great. It just tells us what needs to be done.
Do we want to make a motion that will prepare a summary report of what we found out and how we feel that it affects the town through the Charter Review Committee?
John, may I make a comment?
Sorry.
Yes, Walter.
Walter?
Thank you. First, we owe a great debt of gratitude to Sarah, who was tremendous help in guiding us through this process. And I really would like to give a shout out to her for putting together the information. We did get 100 responses, but this was not a randomized survey. So I think we have to be somewhat careful about drawing conclusions about the validity of some of the statements from people that we heard from. I think we should take them seriously, but we have to revalidate them by other means. So I think that Mark's suggestion is a good one, that as we go forward in our process, we should incorporate these concerns in our interactions with the parts of the town government which have responsibility in those areas where concerns have been expressed. But I also don't think that precludes us from doing what you suggested, John, which is to send the report to the select board for their consideration. So I move that we do that.
I agree.
Okay, did you get that, Gail?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Patricia.
Mhm.
Okay, now in further discussion, who's going to help prepare this report?
I will. Maxine and I
I will,
are working on this.
yeah.
Okay, how about you, Walter, too?
I think we don't really want to say a lot, and I think we send a cover note with the report saying this is what we did. It's not a scientific survey, but there's some interesting results which we will incorporate in our process, and please take a look at it.
Yeah, and we'll just try to get it. Maxine already did for part of it,
Categorized.
categorizing the comment.
That was
And the
great.
other important thing to realize is that not everybody who filled out the survey made any comments at all.
Mhm.
For a summary, I would just take each category and put a sentence or two of these people by large, or most of these people therefore feel, or there's a real difference of opinion in this area. I mean, just very simple
Right.
summary for each category.
And you can, and there's people who always complain about the taxes. You know,
And some people who like the spending, who feel the spending's important, not who
Right.
like the spending.
Could I just, you've added a lot of things. Could I just ask you to summarize the motion again? Because I don't know whether you were including those things or not.
No, that they're not included in the motion. The motion is only to provide this to the select board with a.
Summary report.
Yeah.
mhm.
Thank you.
Any further comments? All those in favor by roll call? Mark,
Mark Person, aye.
Patricia,
Tricia Fallender, aye.
Robin,
Robin Hubbard, aye.
Gail,
Gail Myers Lavin, aye.
Maxine,
Maxine Minkoff, aye.
Walter,
I,
and John Fuller agrees. That motion passes 7-0.
So I just have a question because there's, interestingly, one of the people said that we're not ADA compliant. There was only one person, and I don't know if some of these things should actually be looked into. I mean, I don't know who it was or what happened, but I thought we've done a lot to make us ADA compliant in town.
Wouldn't that be part of what we're sharing with the select board?
Right.
And that it would be up to them?
I think, Robin, there's some buildings which are protected if they were built before the
Oh.
regulations come into
Yeah.
effect. And
Yeah,
so they get changed as you retrofit and restore or rebuild.
Okay.
So it might be that's
Right.
the driver behind that
'Cause
comment.
I'm sure the person who had that comment ran into something and, and it's nice, it would be nice that we don't know who that person is, but at some point when we report out that we make some sort of acknowledgement that we're working on the ADA compliance.
Well, I could give you some background on that. I used to be on the handicap committee,
Mhm.
which was very active about, well, it must be 8 years ago now. But it was so restrictive in who could be on the committee. It had to be persons with certain disabilities and that type of thing. And we couldn't get people to come to the meetings to have a quorum to decide things. And we discussed everything from the public buildings to people parking in handicap spots that shouldn't be, and can we enforce that? Can we not enforce that? And the whole committee fell by the wayside. I don't even know if it's an active committee in town anymore. And we used to meet at the Council on Aging because we thought that we'd get people there that might be more apt to give us ideas of what needed to be corrected, if anything. I think it's a valid thing to discuss, and we should bring the fact to the select board that at least some people feel that this is an issue in town.
Well, and it's a committee that we don't seem to be able to populate, which is a sad thing. I mean, I actually worked for a while trying to find people to fill committees, and that one was particularly difficult. You're right, because it has such restrictions as to who can be on it.
Right.
So,
And I think one of the most interesting, or one of the most interested people moved to Brewster. Tad Vautrinot. So I think you and John, you and Tad were on at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, ironically, I'm wondering if at this point in time, it wouldn't have been easier because of Zoom.
that's true.
Because why?
Because of
Zoom.
Zoom,
Yeah.
Zoom, you don't have to go out to a meeting. Yeah.
Well, and
which
that gets
also
to,
means
that
Zoom
gets back
can
to,
continue in certain situations.
right, I was just that's a great point, Maxine, and that gets to Sarah's point about, what happens after June 15th. I don't think we should go back to the way it was before only. I think we should try to create a hybrid model that allows for both in-person participation and external participation.
Mhm.
I agree.
I agree, yes. Because there are people who can't get Sarah's telling us that's her plan. Because there are people who can't get the vaccine because of underlying conditions.
And some people
Right.
don't want to get up in front of everybody at a meeting and be on television and all of that. This is more controlled, and you're in your own home or your own space, and it makes it easier for people to comment.
And you could even turn off the video.
Mhm.
Right?
So we don't see people.
Right.
Certain people.
Well, I was thinking I might go to visit a relative, and I thought, oh no, there's a meeting. I thought, but if I take my computer, I could go, no matter where I go, I can be
That's
part of
right.
the meeting.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. Except
Okay.
that I'm not sure, because what will happen is Governor Baker going to then say that we can't go back? I mean, that we must go back to the way we were meeting before with the open meeting law? Because we're under emergency circumstances now, I believe. Sarah, do you know?
Sarah?
I do have some insight because the June 15th is when it the emergency order ends and everything goes back to where it was. So the meeting regular things, you have to have a quorum in the building. But you can have members remote participate. So for like the selectmen or select board who are 5, 3 of them would have to be in the building, but the other 2 could remote participate in.
And that's the way it was originally set up, correct?
Yeah, that's how it was.
And it becomes really important for regulatory bodies that have to have a quorum in order to take action. So the Conservation Commission, that's been really helpful to have somebody be able to Skype in even before the pandemic.
So it does raise a very interesting question that for us in our discussions about emergencies and so on and so forth, because there's been a lot of talk about businesses not wanting to go back to the brick and mortar way of life. And those are, now that we've lived through a year and a half of Zoom, those types of restrictions are really quite restrictive, just as some of you were starting to say. And I'm not sure where one would go. If it's state law, it's state law. But I don't know.
Well, I assume the Attorney General is going to put out some kind of response to all of this once that opens up.
And the state law currently in the regular version of it does allow for hybridization participation. You just have to have a physical quorum of the members in place.
Yes.
After that, you can do long distance interviews. You can take public comment by long distance. So it's just whether we'll have the facilities in town hall to be able to do that, because I think it would mean that you would have to have each person in a committee meeting having a laptop in front of them.
Walter, we're working on that. Mia and I were planning on that to do that. So we are definitely looking to do that hybrid thing. It's just getting all the equipment into place before June 15th.
Oh, well, that's a small challenge, but I know it's no surprise to me, Sarah, that you were like way ahead of the curve.
Mark, do you have a comment?
Yeah. This is, think about this. This is crazy to have 3 out of 5 people there. What's the difference if there are 2 there or 1 there? Doesn't make any difference in terms of what you do, what you decide to be in a brick and mortar meeting. The rest of the world isn't waiting on this. It really.
Unfortunately, the Commonwealth is behind them.
Yeah. Well, the Commonwealth, I'm the Commonwealth. You're the Commonwealth. She's the Commonwealth. So you tell your representative that we have people that think we can still continue in this, and why don't we have a little home rule that we can choose to do it if we want to, and not choose to do it if we don't want to at our option. Probably one of the things that keeps people away who are over 70 or don't drive or do in the wintertime is they don't like to go out in the wintertime and drive, especially if it's a tough night. Where I come from, that was always a problem. We go into a meeting and it's snowing like hell. So I think this is an opportunity to tell the Commonwealth through the reps and the senators that why don't we leave it to the cities and towns to make a determination whether or not the hybrid consists of having 1 person there or no persons there, because this is working in the entire world and it's obviously worked for a year. So why do we have to go backwards when we've had an opportunity to use this model? And if you want to use a hybrid, fine. But why does the Commonwealth have to tell us how a board of select people have to meet?
Well, this is precisely why we have home rule, I would suggest. And I think that, I don't know, I'm thinking about Chapter 7, its title, Citizen Participation, Election and Recall. isn't exactly appropriate, but citizen awareness, participation, whatever. There's a logical place where one could, you know, do some home rule activities to at least broaden or at least make a statement of the way our committee meetings are allowed, multi-member bodies can take place. It took a long time to get the one person to be calling in from somewhere else when Mark Karen was in the select board, but we did it. So, you know, maybe we can be more ahead of the curve with this. This to me goes right to Maxine's concern about pandemics, which we never had before, and emergency situations. This isn't an emergency, but just a more convenient way of gaining citizen participation.
Oh.
Maxine,
Things are always more complicated, it seems, than the solutions suggest. And I could think of some people who have not been able to participate because it's been virtual. You know,
That's
you're
true
gonna
too.
find
That
something
is
that
true.
works for everyone. And I would hope that once we get things quote back to normal, that people are watching to see what did work better one way, what should be brought back from the pandemic days, and what are we delighted to get rid of? You know, I don't think it's yes and no. I think things get much more murky than that once they start being operationalized.
But
So-
isn't that the hybrid word that Walter used, perhaps?
No, I'm saying even the hybrid might have this effect. We just have to wait and see how things
Yeah.
are working. That's all. I'm
Robin.
saying.
Well, I was thinking, because we were talking about the Commission on Disabilities, it was just a perfect commission that the Zoom format works for. And, you know, it shouldn't be that they're locked into having to go to a meeting someplace. If you have a disability, to get to a meeting might be a very difficult thing to do. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things where we're going to need to look at this for all of the committees and things that are meeting in town hall and wherever else they're meeting. Because if we can include people who didn't normally get included because they couldn't get out to meetings, that would be wonderful.
okay, Mark, and then Pat, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Simple answer to Maxine's question is those people who can't Zoom, they can come to town hall. They can Zoom there. But
Pat,
My question is, in a home rule charter, can we propose to have this kind of hybrid model and not have to follow everything that the state says about quorums?
That's what Michael.
why not? I
Why
think it's
not? If we
something
have
that
home rule,
and something that we need to develop some kind of statement or paragraph or whatever expressing that. And if we do that and get it to the select board and then to a town meeting, that forces the state to take some action.
Yeah. I mean, they may say, no, you can't, or they may say, well, it'll work until somebody sues you.
no, or you get an opinion from the SJC that says whether you can do it or you're not. You're not.
Excuse me.
Exactly.
no. So I think we need to think about that and, you know, see where it fits in our charter as far as whether it's multi-member bodies or the select board or whatever. You know, we have to figure out where does that fit if we want to put that in a home rule charter.
It might be kind of an overarching thing because it fits on several different areas.
Right.
Mhm.
I think chapter
So we'd have
7 is probably its place.
Well,
Yeah,
I think that's going to appear on
I
the
haven't thought
future
about it till
agenda item.
today, so I have to think about it some more, so,
It'll be a future agenda item list.
yes.
Yeah. I
It's
think
getting
I've got
longer.
that on my paper. Okay, let's wrap this section up for now
Okay.
and move on to number 7. Maxine again, Charter Review Committee's role in committee charges.
Okay, well, that was kind of something I took on ad hoc. And so let me just explain what I've been doing and what I'm hoping I can get help with. Now, Robin sent me charges for, I think, 20 committees. And then someone mentioned, well, we have 35. So I spent this last week hunting for the other 15. And of course, when I added those, it got messier because some are committees, some are task forces, some are elected, some are not. But I put together as many as I could, put on as many. So there are boards, there are task forces, there are committees. And for each one, I found the charge and the tasks that are supposed to get to the charge, help with the charge. I did not include any groups that included outside of Orleans purview. I made sure they were all Orleans. And underneath them, I tried to think of as many other committees, groups, task forces, whatever, they should be working with. That there clearly are some overlaps. And I know it's a very incomplete list. But John, did you receive it? I sent it. John?
Yes,
You
I did
didn't
not
receive it?
receive it.
Oh, okay. I sent it last night. Or yeah, actually I sent it 3 different times yesterday. But I will send, can I send it to the whole committee?
Sure.
Okay, I'll send it
That's
to everyone
preferable.
tonight so you could see. And what I really would hope is that you could add on at the bottom any committees, groups that you think should be interacting with them. I also have I'm sorry?
Is it going to be a spreadsheet type?
It is not a spreadsheet. What it is the charge, bulleted points of tasks. And I basically took the written charges, which were narrative, and bulleted them with as few words as I could,
Okay.
which are still too many words, but it's easier to read. And after that, once we see where the connections are, I think we can look at more of a web. But I thought that this was the only way when I read through them that I could really think it through. I also put on a separate sheet just the charges of each of the groups. So you could just see the charge itself without the tasks. And
That's good.
on the bottom of the first list are the groups that I did not include. So you
Okay.
can see what's left out from everything I could find. So I'll send all that to you.
Good.
And what I'm finding is just very quickly, some groups really seem to need to interact with almost everyone. And some groups, there aren't so many crosses that I could find, which might have to do with my knowledge base, rather than fact. That's why it's important that everyone look at it.
Mhm.
I also included in there the select board, which is really just the charge is their whole chapter in the charter. But being that, there are always issues, there's always the select board, there's the finance, where's the committee, where is the overlap there? I said, so I thought we should look at all of it. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you.
I think we can all look at that, and then somewhere in the next couple of months, we'll
Yeah.
analyze it some more.
Yeah, no rush in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have?
Now, under that, Maxine, under
Yeah.
7, some of the things we had, there was a mention by Mark of a committee of committee chairs.
Yeah,
Excuse
well,
me,
that's.
John, before we leave that first, just before we leave that point, I had my hand up. One of the things that concerns me that I think we should look at is the difference between the charges and the descriptions on the citizen information form. Personally, I joined the Personnel Advisory Board because I looked at the charge. And it turned out that the charge had been changed by the town administrator to a description. And the two of us that were members were kind of totally confused for almost a year. We only meet once a year, but we were actually at total cross purposes because there was such a difference. And I just don't know if there are others similar, or whether while we're doing this, we could suggest that they marry up better. I think, so what I'm saying is I think the descriptions for the citizen
For the
interest
description of
forms.
the committees?
Yeah,
Is that what
if you look at the town report on the back page, it's got the descriptions of the committees.
Okay,
And they don't have, in some cases, and that was one, much relationship to the charge.
okay.
So
That's good.
I
That's
think
a
when
good
we're
thing.
doing that, we
Yeah,
should
if
do
I
that.
can find that, or you can send it to me, I'll do that at
Sure.
the same time.
Okay,
Sure,
that'd be great.
sure.
Sorry, John.
That's okay. Any other comments that you'd like to make? One that came up last meeting was, I wasn't aware of, was the Recreation Advisory Committee's community coordinator idea. I hadn't heard of that before that last meeting. And I'm just wondering where that stands with the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, go on, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I know that Alan spoke about a job description of someone who's going to be hired.
Yes.
That came up, and my understanding is that the select board is looking at that description again. In terms of the role it will play, that person will play.
Okay,
My additional knowledge is that it's called a program coordinator on the draft.
Mhm.
And what is interesting is that it has that person being involved with just about everybody in the world except the Recreation Advisory Committee.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the job description you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's being relooked at.
yeah.
no, that's good. I think that's something we don't need to get involved in at this time, but it should not leave our horizon.
No, it won't.
Because
Yeah.
that seems to be a point of contention that's through our whole discussion on recreation.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I was looking at was, I think that, and it's just my opinion, that if the regulatory committees need to be in the charter and how they control their regulation or what they do. While some of the other committees, if they're not a commission, that's been established by the state, which should be in the charter, that they really don't need to be specifically mentioned in the charter. But I do think that the regulatory committees need to be spelled out because they have some real effect on the lives of citizens when they attempt to do something.
John,
Maxine and Gail.
If you look at the example we just looked at, the advisory committee is certainly not a regulatory committee. But what's happening there are concerns now about how they're working together
Mhm.
and what the role is from one to the other. And I would hate to see that left out and that be left as something that people have to contend on around each issue. So the degree to which we could have something, not for each committee maybe, but something in there that speaks to how people are expected to work together. Whenever, and that they are expected to work together.
Right.
I think we have something solid enough to have conversations about, or for the select board to have conversations with groups about. I
Yeah.
would leave them out totally.
John, I think you and I were on the same wavelength. I actually went this week and looked at all of the all of chapter 6, basically,
Mhm.
to see who was listed. And there are only those boards, those multi-member committees, bodies that in the town, in the state law, in other words, the only ones that are there are the ones that the town took from state law. So that's the answer that we've all been struggling about, and I should have remembered that, but I'd forgotten. So that is why there are only those, except for the Charter Review Committee, which was put there because as a home rule piece. So I think I think that there needs to be something important stated more strongly than we have at the front end, which says that here are the regulatory committees, if you like, and there are many others that are not in the charter that have been developed through the town, and make that explicit so that we really don't struggle with this anymore, because I'd forgotten, and obviously we were all trying to figure it out. A second point, though, while thinking about what Maxine was saying, is there some way that in some pieces of the charter, it says that, I think it's the planning board, that the director of planning and whatever will work with
Right.
the planning board.
Yes. There are several places like that.
There are several that are like that, and there are several that are not.
That's right.
And that again might be something that maybe should be looked at. And
Mm.
Yeah.
The issue I have with that is that these multi-member bodies should automatically do that. Why do we have to tell them they need to talk to other committees that may have have the same issues that they need to resolve? It seems that we don't have very many responsible committee members if they can't get out and talk to another committee if there's the same ideas are being professed.
Well,
I think
Mark, then Robin, and then Maxine again.
I don't know if I'm pushing 7B, the committee on chairs, but it seems to me that you can look at the sharing of power and the dispensing of power coming from three places. One, obviously, from the select board, the other one from the town administrator, and the third one from the boards, commissions, committees, call them what you want. And the reason they don't talk to each other is because of the fact that, at least from my observations, the select board enables them not to do it, because the select board is so dedicated to knowing what's going on that they assign a liaison to each committee. And although I think that's laudable, it's an incredible amount of time to dedicate. And then you have this cross interbreeding in which the other board that I'm on is the board of water and sewer. And on that, the chair of that committee is the chair of the planning board. Okay. Not only that, you have a designated person from the Board of Health. Now, what you're trying to do is address the issue, but you're also forcing communication, and that's good. But if the select board has confidence and trust in this, I think I say it's great that they want to be there, but in terms of being efficient, I really don't see it. If you have a committee on committee chairs, then the chair of the water and sewer board and the planning and the chair of the planning committee, the chair of the Board of Health, they have a place to go and to meet and to discuss, and then say, well, this is what I can bring back. I'm trying to make the flow sort of go like gravity, downhill, not sideways and backwards and up and down. So that's my observation, and I've seen in other places when the chairs of all the town committees, and not all 35 or all 20, doesn't have to be that, my God, but an awful lot gets shared and done in a very orderly way, even if they met once a month. But this kind of jumping in and hopscotching in and out is, to me, it's incredibly time consuming. And the other thing is that these charges that come out from the select board say this is what you're going to do, but check in with us. So here you have from a structural point of view, a town administrator who's basically doing the contracts relative to the Board of Water and Sewage. So you've got this. Well, I've got to have my hands in this and have the decision in this and decision in that, and with the exception of maybe the planning board and the zoning board, everything comes back to the select board, which is a model, but I don't think it's a very efficient model. And I hit a nerve, apparently, in a community, at least that's the feedback I got on the tennis court, which I don't know how scientific it was, but it certainly was vocal. Anyway, about the difficulty parents who talk about the Recreation Commission having, either being heard or getting the programs that they want, and the confusion of responsibility as to where they go to ask somebody to get something done. So I think a committee on chairs would help that to a great degree.
I agree.
Yeah. Maybe a committee of select board liaisons.
Robin was next, I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a full-time job. I'm in awe at the amount of time that the select board spends on an individual basis that you're doing this. I light a candle to every one of them, but I don't know if it's the best way to run a railroad.
Pat?
Well, I think Robin was waiting.
Yes.
Oh, Robin?
I just wanted to go back to actually a little bit of what Mark said, but when you were talking about there's no reason why committees can't talk to each other. I think one of the other things that's important is that if we have a committee that's working on something such as the Recreation Committee or any of the other ones, which are not state regulatory committees, someplace in here, someplace it also needs to be said that whatever department they're working in towards, that department should be listening to them.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't get to a point where somebody's saying, well, we're trying to get something done, but we can't get it done. And nobody seems to be listening to us. So I think if nothing, I think one of the reasons they want to have their committees listed in the multi-member bodies is so that then they can say, look, it's in the charter, you have to listen to us. Whereas if we have some place that we make a statement to the effect that, all the multi-member bodies
Count.
have to be, need to be listed. I don't know how to say it
Yeah.
right off the top of my head.
They all count.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's disagreement. I mean, I think to Mark's point, there are a lot of committees, and the select people have to go to a lot of liaisons to a lot of committees. But the other way of looking for solutions is kind of why I'm looking to see where is there collaboration, or where is there overlap,
Mhm.
is should there be fewer committees with somewhat broader responsibilities? So it might cover two of the committees, or one committee has two different parts. But when you hear the Bicycle Safety Commission, and I understand what they're saying, say we're not really recreation because we're involved with safety. And then you have the Recreation Committee wanting to also include bicycles as part of it. Well, what are we really talking about here?
Right.
You know, or had a conversation where the, and I say this not because this is necessarily the way to go, but the senior citizen, the council on aging
Mhm.
is very solid. And there's more talk about the need for more intergenerational opportunities. You could also have a lifelong recreation committee that incorporates educational issues through the ages. I mean, there are ways of looking at it that broaden the scope. What I would not want to do is just include the regulatory committees as they are now, for the very reason you said, is that Robin said, then the others aren't taken quite as seriously. Or they don't have the same authority or authorizing environment where they feel they have any serious input. And it's only at the whim of another body. I'm done. I know.
Gail?
I think it's important, I really do, that we have a section that makes that statement very loud and clear, perhaps at the front end of chapter 6, which gives due recognition to what are in fact the non-regulatory bodies, and we write that language and we make it strong and we make it clear. I think that's really important. The second thing, and I've said this for so many years, I'm really tired of it. We wrote that language about that the select board shall be liaison to the committee. It was to committees. It was never intended ever that they divide up the multi-member bodies and go to all those meetings. It came, like many things do, at a time when I think there was unhappiness with the way town hall was being run, and there was a board of selectmen that kind of wanted their fingers in more pies than you could possibly think to try and make sure that nothing bad happened. And so they started this thing where they gave representation from the board to every committee. The idea when it was written was that that person would have a chat with the chair of that committee and read the minutes, and have the chair of that committee just let them know, this is coming up, or, you might want to visit. But there was never any intention that the select board would do all that work.
I think it would be interesting to ask the select board. Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, let's do Pat and Mark.
Okay. As far as I just want to go back to the committee of committee chairs. Is that something that you want to spell out in the charter, or is that something that should be select board policy?
I would
That they
rather
would-
hold that in the charter.
Okay, so I think, I know there are some other committees. I served on the Architecture Review Committee, and we were sort of with the planning board and the site plan review, and we were sort of in the middle of all of that. And finally, we started communicating. So, but Architecture Review is not in the charter, but it does it does make decisions as to how things should look in town. So whether that should be one that's added or whether that's considered regulatory or not. I mean, that's why we have to look at each of these and see what would be appropriate to add and what doesn't have to be there. But I think I also believe that we need to put something at the beginning of that chapter that says any multi-member bodies that have been created by the select board and given a charge should be responded to by the town, by the select board, or should have that kind of recognition for the work that they're doing, and that, you know, they may come up with a suggestion, but they shouldn't be dismissed. And I don't know how exactly to word that, but, you know, they have some, we should put something in there, maybe at the beginning of the chapter.
Mark,
Think about it in a different way. What you do is you put the committees, commissions, whatever you want to put a label on them, in the charter, and you give them the power to act independently of the select board. And any other committee that the select board wants to create, they can create by one phrase in the charter that says you can, you know, construct committees and give them charges to report back to the select board. Now, in a lot of communities, big and small, talking about recreation, I mean, they have a committee or a commission called Parks and Recreation, notwithstanding the TV show, but Parks and Recreation, and that encompasses the parks, the recreations, the bike safety committee, the pedestrians, and everything else, and the rec committee that goes into that. And in some communities, Parks and Recreations, people are elected rather than appointed. But once you do that, the Parks and Recreation Committee are running the Parks and Recreation, and the select board doesn't have to approve everything. The way the select board doesn't have to approve the planning board because it's a regulatory commission, where it doesn't have to approve the zoning board, where it's a regulatory commission. So you have to take kind of a leap and saying that, you know, we're going to give up some power to get some efficiency. Now, there's no reason why a Park and Recreation Commission can't have a subcommittee that they can put together on architecture or on bikes or on pedestrians or in anything. But you begin to create kind of independent entities and take and leave the select board to what the select board is really about, and that is fundamental policy decisions for the community. That's what they're elected to do. They're not elected to, you know, to manage the minutia. I mean, you have a professional to manage. So if you can, you know, see that concept, you don't get into all this lack of communication. You know, as the newbie on the street, I'm hearing all this. Gee, we don't have time. We're running around. We do so much things. We don't know. And you have to break through that and say, there are other ways to do things, and these things are not novel. I mean, other communities in the Commonwealth and other communities around the country have this. They've had it for years. But if you just have a committee after a committee after a committee, and you have all these charges that come out from the select board, and then it has to go back to the select board for every time you want to order a tennis ball, that's, you know, exaggeration. but you really can't move forward. Because words in the charter just won't make it work. You need a systemic, understanding of who's making decisions and who should do what. I still don't know from being around this neighborhood about 10 to 12 years now, whether or not this community wants economic growth. I don't know. I don't know if they want it or they don't want it. They talk about it, but I don't know if they really want it. If they really want it, then what kind and what do we do about it? Or if they don't, I guess they're happy with what with what is.
Walter.
Thank you. This is an interesting discussion. It's gone a lot of different directions. Potentially, I'm picking up on what Gail said about what happened, the unintended outcome of the liaison suggestion. I think one principle with whatever we do is we should try to think about what might be the unanticipated outcomes of some of these things that we do for one reason, but have another outcome. So I think we don't know what committee structure will be needed 5 years from now, or what needs might emerge where we would want to have a task force or a committee respond. So I agree that potentially, perhaps we don't want to list them all, even the ones that currently exist, and we only list the regulatory bodies that we have to do by statute. Maybe a better way to approach is to think about what should be the town's process for establishing and managing committees and task force. One thing that's been mentioned is a charge, but perhaps we should go a little further and say that the charge should include not only the outcome that's expected, but also a point of contact within the town that the committee is linked to. Maybe there's a sunset clause after which the charge is reviewed. Maybe there are term limits for the members. Maybe there are requirements in terms of the specialties and expertise that's required of the members of the body. But these things should be put in place before the committee is empowered to actually act. And there should be identification of what their powers actually are, what's expected of them, to get at some of the issues that Mark's been addressing. But maybe if we thought about, and maybe actually, Gail, maybe there's a best practices from the municipal organization about committee structures, how to set them up and how to manage them. Just an idea.
Maxine.
No, I would add on to that there also should, if we were to go that route, there should also be something in terms of the groups that they respond to or coordinate with within the town also has a responsibility to those committees through the select board.
You mean staff or other committees?
I mean departments, department manager. for instance.
Department manager, exactly, yeah.
But I have to think a lot more about it before I know.
Yeah.
I think there's general agreement that there are too many committees, not enough coordination one way or another, and everyone is feeling very busy.
Pat.
I think that's a great idea, Walter. But when I think about the charter, and I think about having worked on it a number of times and how charters are set up as constitutions, that this sounds like a really good idea, but should it be an adopted policy of the select board? Okay.
Rather than the charter.
Rather than the charter, should it be the policy of the select board will be, and this is how we set up committees, this is how it should, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of things can be, a lot of the problems that we have with a lot of micromanaging could be eliminated if we had policies that were adopted by the select board of how things should be done. And I'm sure they have policies. I haven't seen them. I don't know what they are, but maybe this is something that is a policy that's adopted by the select board because they are the executives, and then we are the legislature as town meeting. So I think we have to work on that as to should this be in the charter or should this be a policy situation?
I will tell you, there is a select board policy book
Okay.
where they have their policies in writing.
And are they reviewed
They're supposed to review it every year.
every year? Okay.
I'll give you an example. Taking of public streets, there's a policy on that. And right now there's a moratorium that their policy is a moratorium. We won't take any private roads and make them into public roads.
All right.
That's an example. But there is a policy book and it's in the town administrator's office. But I think the fact that there are probably several people that don't know that exists, that should be on the website, available on the website.
I agree.
Yes.
You know,
You think we should put that on our
when they
resource
get
page?
to reviewing the website, those are things that we're operating the town by these ideas, policies, rules, but they're just in a bookcase in the town administrator's office.
Yep.
I don't even know if any of the new select board members have looked at it. But when I was on the select board, we reviewed it every year.
Sarah just posted the website to get the policies in the chat.
Maybe
right
we
on
should
top
put
of
that
it.
on our resource page.
Yes,
Good idea.
Okay.
but they need to take a serious look at their policies to make sure they're actually operating in conjunction with their policy. Because you know how that can wander.
Right.
Mark.
That's a good reason why it should be in the charter.
What?
You can't find them in the bookies that they haven't read and nobody knows about them. And we learn about it historically through our fearless leader here. We've come to the conclusion that maybe this is not exactly working, so that we ought to put it in a place where it's stated. Is there anything else, in the bookcase that we should know about?
Oh, none that comes to my mind until you start talking about it, then it'll come to my mind.
I think there was that hatchet, wasn't there, John?
Yeah, right.
How about the policy on the eldest citizen cane,
That's right.
Right.
There's a
And
policy
the
on
horse,
it.
something about horses. I remember there was something about horses when 1,000 years ago, when there was a committee to look at the bylaws. And actually, that's another thing that I think should be, it is up, it's in the town code. But there was one that I remember was taken out, which had something to do with horses not being able to go up Thompson Road anymore.
Well, they're all valid points, but what we have to do is figure out ourselves and then make recommendations that the select board, a lot of these things are already out there, but they're going to have to either start enforcing them or making sure that the policies are being enforced. But they're elected by the town to do this.
Right.
You know, it's difficult. I'm not in favor of independent committees. I'm not in favor of those at all.
Right.
But doesn't mean that they're not a valid point.
So
Remember, the select board gets the big bucks.
Oh, yeah.
bigger than us.
You can bring a horse to water.
That's correct. And what we're trying to do now is force them to drink. I think we brought up some valid points on this issue, and we need to do some more research on how we might appropriately put it in the charter so it performs what it's supposed to do, to alert people that this is your job, this is how you do it.
Mhm.
But Now, this is your job, but you have to make a policy on how to do it. But, Mark,
I'd just like to state and at least put on the record. I also put in D a committee to welcome new Americans,
right?
and the census just came down, and in 2010, Massachusetts had more or less 6 million people. In 2020, Massachusetts now has more or less 7 million people. All of those people, not every single one of them, but just about every single one of them is an immigrant. The only reason Massachusetts is keeping 9 congressional seats in the House of Representatives is because of immigration to Massachusetts. So immigration is something that really ought to be a town and a home rule kind of topic. And it also has to do with, labor and economic growth and a whole lot of other things that, we talked about. But I would just like to, just emphasize, where that is, what it means in terms of Massachusetts, in terms of the nursing corps, the medical corps, construction people, other skilled laborers.
Professors.
There are a huge amount of these folks who are coming into Massachusetts and making their lives here. And I think that the town ought to, have a committee that effectively, addresses the needs of new Americans.
So you want to add another committee, Mark?
I want to add one, and it's track 25. If you can understand that without a quadratic equation, it's really simple. It's just simple arithmetic.
I agree, because we have a lot of, in town here, we have quite a few immigrant families who are here, and they're working towards citizenship.
That's right. So I would just like to put that in, I don't know, future agenda items of where you want to place it, John. But I think it's a very, very important thing.
Well, I think you need to work on how you would state it in the charter, or how we would present it to the select board as a recommendation for a welcome new Americans thing, committee. We can only make that recommendation because most of the committees in town, save the regulatory committees, are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. I won't say the planning board is a select board committee, but most of the non-regulatory ones are the select board committee. And they can abolish it anytime they want. They cannot abolish the planning board or the conservation commission or something like that. So we need to make that distinction somehow.
Well, we can make that distinction, but you also can add it. You can also add it to the charter in other ways.
Okay. Well, present us some of those ways.
But
It might
we
be,
got-
if John,
We talk about them, but if we have them in writing in front of us, it makes it easier to make a decision.
maybe a better way to address that issue is in sort of the preface to the document that we've been talking about, the statement of principles, is to underline that, Orleans wants to be and likes to be thought of as a welcoming community, including to new citizens.
Yep.
That's a good idea, Walter.
So it's more like a preamble statement.
Right, like an element of that thing that was lost from the last one.
Yep. I agree.
I think that's a great thing to state in principle. However, there are some communities that have active new American committees. And those committees are involved in integrating people into the community on a very proactive basis. They're also proactive in connection with citizenship and process of citizenship, and becoming a citizen in the United States that used to consist of a couple of pages is now up to 22 and climbing. So I think that we can say we're welcoming, but doing something about it in an active way is a course that can be concurrent. It doesn't have to be exclusive.
Mark,
Yeah.
I don't know that we disagree, but first of all, I'm not sure what the actual size of the non-Native American population of Orleans actually is. Also, I'm aware that there's a very active faith-based initiative to welcome people from outside the community. The Nauset Interfaith does a fabulous job. So I don't know that there's really a need for additive services. If there were gaps, if there was a space that should be filled and the town could provide some useful services, then maybe a committee would be helpful. But I just don't think we have the knowledge right now to make that judgment.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I just have
Okay.
one question. The email that we got from Tracy Murphy
Mhm.
came through Charter Ideas, and I was waiting to see. We talked about the fact that the select board is reviewing the that position, that coordinator position. So is that something I should add to the? Should I add this to the spreadsheet, to the database?
Yeah, I think so. So we don't-
Okay, I just want to make sure before I did it.
Yeah.
Back of it.
Okay, I will add this to the database, and then we'll upload a new one with some other corrections that need to be made.
And it might be included in that summary of the survey, because I believe that was answered a couple of times in the survey.
Okay. Okay, but I will put something in the spreadsheet then.
Okay.
Before we upload the new one. And then I had one other thing. I reconfirmed that on June 7th that the town moderator, David Little, will be with us.
Mhm.
So, and Sarah will send him a link to the Zoom, because maybe that's our last Zoom meeting.
That's what she said. She thought that might be the last.
So,
And I'm still waiting to hear from Bob Canning. And I'm trying to get a hold of the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, because I want to hear their take on the proposed recommendation to include a specific member of the Recreation Advisory Committee as a member of the Community Preservation Committee.
John, I'm the chairman of that committee.
Oh, good.
I wasn't aware you were trying to reach me.
I don't know how, because you're actually not listed on the list of committees that I got. So I'm
Well,
going to put.
I hope you weren't pestering my predecessor,
I haven't really
Julia.
tested anybody. I was just trying to find their emails. But I think we might want to have a comment on that on the 7th, Walter.
Okay.
I'm going to put that down as a specific thing for the CPC committee to give us their take on that recommendation that we're proposing. Anything else on the thing we just discussed? All right, future agenda items. We're still getting ready to talk to more people. Getting the chapter shepherds ready for their particular assignments. I just listed the further discussion on the town manager, town administrator. Probably will happen when we finally get something before the select board so we can discuss that particular issue. But I don't want to lose sight of it. We already established the town moderator. We just had kind of a discussion on the responsibility for the implementation of select board policies. I'm getting the general gist from public comment that nobody seems to take responsibility to implement the policies they have come up with.
Mhm.
And we discussed that a bit tonight, but I don't want to lose sight of that either. And I will get a hold of the Board of Health to see if they have anything they would like to bring before us. And the last thing is the role of the Open Space Committee.
We have the public safety people too, don't we?
The what?
The public safety, police and emergency police and fire. Weren't we going to try and get them?
Right, because we need to understand what a strong chief is. It is a actual title, Commonwealth title. And right now the town has adopted the strong police chief and the strong fire chief. And that may tie back to when we discuss the role of the town administrator / town manager. Because as a strong chief, he cannot hire firemen or policemen.
So could we try and, so we've got 2 for June the 7th,
Yeah,
which is the first one.
yeah,
The
one's
30th
really, no,
we've got 2 people coming on the 7th, 14th, 28th. Could we try to put a
21st.
couple of those on the 28th?
21st, Gail.
No, 21st.
21st.
Sorry?
Well, I would like to get, let me try to get a hold of the police and fire chief and see when they would like to talk with us, if they want to talk with us. I'm sure the police chief does, because he's very aware of the rumblings about who's going to hire firemen and policemen. And I'm sure he's going to want to give us his take on that. So I will contact the fire chief and police chief, and you're suggesting the 21st?
21st, I'm sorry. Yes, 21st.
21st of June, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I will put that on the future agenda items and get a hold of those people.
I am assuming we are not meeting on July 5th.
That's correct. That's when we celebrate the 4th of July.
Okay.
Well, next meeting
Okay.
is,
Our next meeting is June 7th.
7th.
What?
7th.
7th. So excuse me, John, should we be starting to talk to the select board about meeting with them?
Right, because it's after town meeting.
It's after town,
I
right?
will get that on too.
I asked Meph about that too. I think we should put that on the, on as one of the agenda items, because his suggestion was that we do it during a work meeting of the board. And I think we were all concerned about when people were going to start summer vacations and things. So we really want to nail that down. I didn't hear back from him. He's not here, but
About having our meeting at one of their work meetings.
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
I will have, what is their work meeting? The second Wednesday?
Well, I think they can set one up. I think they do it like at 4 o'clock or something on a Wednesday. It's always a Wednesday.
Well, that's not going to happen. John Fuller will not be at a meeting.
Oh,
at 3 o'clock when I'm-
okay. You were supposed to retire, John.
You know when I'm going to retire. It'll be a permanent retirement. But
John,
But
you
it could be,
retired.
it
Let
could
you
be
work.
ahead,
We'll let you work it out with meth as to,
yeah.
okay, I'll get.
you figure it out. Mm.
All right. I've got those down on my list here, and I will put them on the future agenda items.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
Okay, anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion to again adjourn at
So
7:09
moved.
PM. So who moved that? Was it
I
Gail?
did.
Second by Maxine? All those in favor by roll call? Mark?
One person, aye.
Pat Callender?
Pat Fallender, aye.
Robin Hubbard?
Robert Hubbard, aye.
Gail Myers-Lavin?
Dale Myers-Lavin, aye.
Maxine Minkoff?
Aye.
Walter North?
Aye,
And you should state your name.
Walter, aye.
And John Fuller also would like to adjourn at 7:09 PM. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy this
Thank you,
beautiful
Sarah.
weather.
Enjoy town meeting on Saturday.
That's
Oh,
right,
yeah.
town meeting.
Right.
Woo.
Vote for the flag, vote for the
Well,
flag.
actually, I won't be there.
And-
I'm going to be in Atlanta.